regardless of whether you're a cleaner or a packer, the Pesach is an appropriate time for a little bit of humor to ease the tension and also to add some inspiration and wisdom. And so we're happy to present Rabbi Weinstein, who's the timing couldn't be any better for those of you who read the New York Post this morning. It's great to be here with you. And thank you. Rabbi Weinstein is a rabbi in Brooklyn, a friend and colleague whose path we have crossed on various issues. And now it's sometimes in the rabbin you talk about more serious issues, life cycle events, kashrus, but here we get to talk about some more light topics. I just thought that I couldn't resist without throwing in a couple of Seinfeld references to introduce the program. We're coming up on the Seder, and we start off with the beginning, Kadesh Orchatz Avadim Hayinu, yada yada yada, Lashana Haba Yerushalayim. And I would be remiss if I didn't notice that it's very likely that as we eat our matzah, this matzah is making me thirsty. So that's it, everybody. I'm out of here. It's a pleasure to turn it over to the author of the Seinfeld Haggadah, Rabbi Sam Weinstein.
First of all, thank you so much for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Doing these classes over these last couple of weeks have been really fun. I'm trying some new ones that I haven't done before because this needs to be fun for me also. And but it's a pleasure to be here with you, especially two esteemed colleagues. As you said, we've crossed paths before, and it's just a pleasure to be here. So I thought first I would give a little bit of an introduction of what's going on here. What am I doing? Why did I do this? The first, I guess, most obvious thing is that you've seen a lot of these type of Haggadahs recently. These kind of, I think the earliest one I saw was a baseball Haggadah like 10 years ago, like a while ago. And I don't know, I feel like Seinfeld has a unique connection to the Pesach story, some obvious, some less obvious. So the most obvious one, I think, is just its popularity. The Haggadah story, the Seder story, is just so emblematic of our tradition. We say it during Shema, we say it during Kiddush. It's just such a big part and parcel of what it means to be Jewish that it's. I think if you asked somebody on the street, like, what's the main Jewish story? Like, I feel like this is very obviously it. And similarly, I think if you went over to people and just were like, what's the most Jewish thing that's happened in the last 50 years? At least in pop culture, probably the state of Israel wins out on that type of thing. But the answer's almost definitely Seinfeld, right? Like, maybe somebody would think like Mrs. Maisel recently, just because it's more recent. But Seinfeld is just such a touchstone of Jewish culture in the last 50 years that maybe it's not like religious culture in particular, but like American Jewish culture is just so pervasive. I do think there's a deeper level here. And what I thought I would do is teach a couple of the Divrei Torah. But before I did that, and so one of them will be, what's the deeper message here? I wanted to first show you just like what this Haggadah looks like for those that don't have it. So it's a Haggadah. This has been the hardest thing that's been trying to explain what this is, because a lot of these Haggadahs are fake Haggadahs, are like parody Haggadahs that are fun and exciting and like are a blast. But this is a real Haggadah. As Rabbi Weinstein, as he was introducing me, you said this is going to be lighter. It's going to be half lighter. But if anything, I'm taking Seinfeld way too seriously, and I'm taking making it far too like a serious thing, rather than making the Torah and the Haggadah a less serious thing. It was hard to even explain this to my wife when I came up with this idea, because she's like, it's like the Seder, it's like a holy thing you're doing. Like, what are you bringing Seinfeld into it? And I kind of said, it's the other way. I'm not making the Haggadah a joke. I'm making Seinfeld fairly serious. So what's happening here, I tried to make it as immersive as possible. So the The thing that stands out most is like the artwork. The artwork throughout. There's like a picture on just about every double-sided page. But it tried to connect the Seinfeld stuff to the Torah stuff. So the Jewy fruits that are here are connected to the commentary on the bottom, which compares. I'll let you think about this on your own, but it compares the fact that when the Jews left Egypt, they took all this wealth. And it seems like an odd thing. They're supposed to leave Egypt. Why are they taking all this wealth? So I was thinking how that was similar and different than when Elaine finds out her boyfriend, Jake Jarmel, is in the hospital and she's just about to enter the movie theater. She goes and buys juji fruits and is eating them when she gets to the hospital. And he gets all upset at her. Why'd you buy juji fruits? So I was thinking, like, I don't know, it's similar, right? Like the Jews are leaving Egypt and they're taking all this wealth. Like, shouldn't they be leaving? Isn't that the whole point? So obviously there are some differences. You can think about that on your own. But on top of that, I tried to put things in the translation. Wanted to make as clear that it was when it was a joke, because obviously I'm messing with the translation. The Hebrew is intact, other than I added like what Pesach things are and quotation marks and things like that. Even it might be hard to see on your screen, but even the line breaking up the top and the bottom, it's like the base intro. It's a transliteration of the base intro in both the Hebrew and English, actually, kind of like introducing the commentary. So I tried to make it as kind of pervasive a Seinfeld experience as possible, while still like making this feel like a real Haggadah. I feel like people are going to actually read everything, even if it's just reading the translation, because they're going to be looking for the jokes. And that's probably unique. I feel like most, you flip through pages eventually, after it's been a couple hours of the Seder. So I thought I would go into a couple of the Divrei Torah, unless anyone has any questions. I'm happy to answer some questions now and some questions later about what the process of this was, about if you have anything specific about the Haggadah. You probably have to unmute yourself to do that. And if not, that's fine as well. Okay, you can think about that for the end after I do some of the Divrei Torah. Oh yeah, please.
I'm just wondering, when engaging in something like this, is there anything that's copyright right or permission needed or anything like that? Hopefully, the fact that we blasted you all over Facebook isn't getting you in trouble or anything.
No. So
I did. By the way, I did message this to Jerry Seinfeld's official fan page. So.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Yeah. So it's funny. I feel like that's how I really know I'm talking to Jewish audiences, because I've gotten this question every single time, and it was not something I was like. I considered it. I spoke to a couple of lawyers before I started, but the fact that we're also law mindset is a thing that I feel like other authors for other books that are similar to this don't have to answer all the time. But essentially, there are a bunch of questions here, but they're all answerable, and anyone can sue over anything. So I'm like trying not to get too much on anyone's radar, because they can, they have lawyers on retainer, I'm sure, that can just like slap something. So, but I was fairly careful. So this is important for life, I feel like, is that there's two ways of fair use, or two main ways of fair use, that you're allowed to use somebody's copyright material. The first is parody. That's what you usually see. There was a famous Nathan For You episode, if you know that show, where he made a parody of Starbucks and made an actual restaurant. But like that's actually like kind of, that had different problems because he was running a restaurant without, like supervision over the food, from a safety perspective. But separate from that, the reason why that's okay actually is because you're allowed to have a parody of something that's copyright. So another thing you can do is have commentary over something that's copywritten, which is why if you think about like all the YouTubers that like show some video from some show and then they talk about it, the reason they can do that is because they're using it for commentary. So inside the book, when I quote anything, so it's for commentary, the bigger issue was the cover. The picture that I am actually in right now, is actually not the Seinfeld department from the show. Rabbi Weinstock's in the Seinfeld department from the show. What I'm in is when Hulu started streaming the show, they recreated the apartment and let people come and visit it. So I was able to buy that picture from Hulu, and then I was able to use it. And the last piece was the logo. Some logos aren't able to be copyright because you can't like copyright a word over a shape. Like it's too simple. Like otherwise I could just like, take a circle and put like stop on it and be like, that's mine now. Like you can't do that. And so yeah, it didn't fall. It wasn't like unique enough to fall under that. So overall, I was fairly careful. I had to take certain things out because at first I had some like longer quotes that I thought were funny, but I took them out because I wasn't actually commenting on them. It was just like it was funny. Any other questions for now?
I would just say, if you have questions like in the middle of something, maybe put in the chat.
Yeah, you're welcome to. I'm happy to answer them as they come up.
Definitely at the, and then
Yeah.
at the end, we'll
Right.
save time for questions.
Right. So the most obvious disconnection between Pesach and Seinfeld is the fact that Seinfeld is purportedly about nothing, right? Like that's why my Haggadah is called the Haggadah about nothing. And I got this a lot of questions. A lot of people ask me, does that mean your Haggadah is about nothing? But the more serious question that I actually have is Seinfeld actually about nothing? So first, what I wanted to show you is that scene. So where does that come from? Where does that idea come from? That the show is about nothing? It's if you've watched it a bunch, you kind of get this feel that it is about nothing, right? Like nothing really happens. There doesn't seem to be meaning in it. They don't grow as characters. Like in a lot of shows, like people learn things, and even if they forget them the next episode, like they learn, like it feels like it's about something. Seinfeld purportedly they were not supposed to learn stuff. Like that was one of like the main things. Even some episodes were cut after they were written because like the whole point was that they're not learning anything. They don't know anything. They're supposed to be essentially bad people throughout all of the 9th season. So where does that come from? So I wanted to share. So this is about a 2-minute clip. Sorry, 1 second. I want to make sure.
Know it by heart.
With the sound. What I want you to think is, so just for background of this is Jerry was NBC producers came over to Jerry and was like, we are funny. We want you to do a show. And what they end up doing is very like meta, where they kind of pitch Seinfeld in Seinfeld. And this is about a 3-part episode. It really is 2, but it goes into the 3rd, where they are pitching the show to NBC.
So what's happening with the TV show? You come up with anything?
No, nothing.
Why don't they have salsa on the table?
What do you need salsa for?
Salsa is now the #1 condiment in America.
Do you know why? Because people like to say salsa. Excuse me, do you have any salsa? We need more salsa. Where's the salsa? No salsa.
You know, it must be impossible for a Spanish person to order salsa and not get salsa.
I wanted salsa, not salsa. Don't you know the difference between salsa and salsa? You have the salsa after the salsa.
This should be the show. This is the show.
What?
This. Just talk.
Yeah, right.
I'm really serious. I think that's a good idea.
Just talking? Well, what's the show about?
It's about nothing.
No story?
No, forget the story.
You gotta have a story.
Who says you gotta have a story? Remember when we were waiting for that table in that Chinese restaurant that time? That could be a TV show.
And who's on the show? Who are the characters?
I could be a character.
You?
Yeah, you base a character on me.
So on the show, there's a character named George Costanza?
Yeah. What, there's something wrong with that? I'm a character. People are always saying to me, you know, you're quite a character.
And who else is on the show?
Elaine could be a character. Kramer.
Now, he's a character. So everybody I know is a character on the show.
Right.
And it's about nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
So you're saying I go into NBC and tell them I got this idea for a show about nothing.
we going to NBC.
We? Since when are you a writer?
What writer? We're talking about a sitcom.
You want to go with me to NBC?
Yeah, I think we really got something here.
What do we got?
An idea.
What idea?
An idea for the show.
I still don't know what the idea is.
It's about nothing.
Right.
Everybody's doing something. We'll do nothing.
So we go into NBC, we tell them we got an idea for a show about nothing.
Exactly.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Okay, so in that scene, right? So that's what so that's where that comes from, right? So it's the show about nothing. There's nothing going on. There's nothing important, and that very much feels like what the show's about. The thing is that just about every episode feels like it's about nothing. It's that episode that is the one episode that actually feels like it's about something, right? Because it's like a 3-part episode. It's the one time where they actually kind of learn something and things go into the next episode, where they're trying to make a show, right? Like all of a sudden the show is about making Seinfeld. And so it kind of like hints to the fact that this show is not actually about nothing. It's about something. So what I wanted to discuss is what that's about. So what I'm going to show is the last scene of the show. And when I mean the last scene of the show, I mean, this is how Seinfeld ends. Like when this scene is over, the show is over. Like there's an after credit scene that lasts like, a minute. It's like one of those like joke after credit scenes, but this is the end of the show, meaning like there's nothing that happens that advances anything whatsoever. This is how the show ends. And I want you to think about like, why in the world would this be the end of a show? It's literally the most popular show on TV. Maybe likely the most popular show ever at that point. And this is how it ends.
Uh-oh. I got it. It's out. About that, huh? Oh, boy, what a relief.
See, now, to me, that button is in the worst possible spot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The second button is the key button. It literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land.
Where you were?
I went to a Zoom quick.
Haven't we had this conversation before?
You think?
I think we have.
Yeah, maybe we have.
So again, this is how the show ends. They're in jail basically for being bad people. Like everyone, one by one, the characters come up and say, this is why they did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. They're in jail and all they talk about is like that his shirt button is a little too high. It feels like the most random thing in the world. And it is the most random thing in the world until you realize, and I feel like everyone that saw the finale didn't put this together because it feels like insane. But it's the only thing, it's the type of thing you put together when you watch this for the first time in college and you're like binging the entire thing, that you actually notice. So if you noticed in the middle, George was like, haven't we spoken about this button question before? And the answer is they have. What I'm about to show is literally the first scene. And again, when I mean the first scene, I mean like literally this is the beginning of the pilot. This is how the show starts. So we're only going to show like 30 seconds of it.
See, now to me, that button's in the worst possible spot. The second button literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land. You look like you live with your mother.
Are you through?
You do, of course, try on when you buy.
Yes, it was purple. I liked it. I don't actually recall considering the button.
Oh, you don't recall.
How come you're not doing the second show tomorrow?
Well, there's this...
So that's how the show ends. The show ends, literally, the show starts. The show starts exactly with the same exact scene. And it's like the wording is like exactly the same, basically. They're talking about the same conversation. 9 years later, they're in jail for being bad people, and they're having the exact same conversation they had 9 years earlier. So clearly what Seinfeld is about four characters, really these two in particular, but all four characters are four characters that don't change at all. They have 9 years, they're exactly the same people, they have the exact same conversations, they're doing exactly the same thing, and they're in jail for it because they're bad people, and this isn't like the life you're supposed to live, right? And somebody actually direct messaged me that, right? It seems like Seinfeld in a way shows us how not to lead our life, right? That's exactly what it is. Seinfeld is showing us at the end, this is not what you're supposed to be. And I feel like that's actually why people hated the finale. The reason why people hated the finale is because it broke with everything else. These characters were relatable for 9 years, and then all of a sudden they're bad. And I feel like everyone that was watching it was like, wait, am I like that? Is that like it kind of like pulled the rug out from everyone, which wasn't very nice, frankly, but it like felt right with the whole thing. And specifically, I think the Haggadah is actually saying the same thing. So I'm just going to share a couple sources fairly quickly. But at the beginning of Magid in Halachmanya, we just say this year we are slaves, next year we will be free people, right? The whole point of the Seder is to kind of go from being enslaved to being free. You're supposed to change. You're supposed to, whatever enslavement means for you, you're supposed to try to become a free person afterwards. You're supposed to change and be different. The Gemara actually kind of talks about like, how are you supposed to change? That you're supposed to start with disgrace and conclude with glory. Matkil b'gnud u'misayim b'shevach. And the Gemara argues, what does that mean? What's the disgrace? So Rav argues that it's that we were idol worshippers at the beginning, and Shmuel says we were slaves. So is it that we were idol worshippers and we became God's people, or that we were slaves and became freed? But regardless, either way, right, like you're supposed to change. We're supposed to feel like we started with disgrace, but we conclude with glory. We're supposed to be different at the end. We're not supposed to be having the same conversations all over again. And Rav Soloveitchik actually says this explicitly, is that the purpose of the Exodus, and thereby its remembrance, is that it's supposed to teach ethical sensitivity, what it truly means to be a Jew. It sought to transform the Jew into a Rachaman, one possessing the heightened form of ethical sensitivity and responsiveness. So he's actually making an argument of what you're supposed to change. But again, right, it's supposed to transform you. The Seder is supposed to make you a different person than you were at the beginning. And I think what the Seder's point is that how do you become a free person? Is that you become better, is you change, is you be a different person than you were the day before. And so what Seinfeld's saying is that if you don't do that, if you don't change, you end up enslaved, you end up in jail. It's essentially the same concept, but like the opposite kind of avenue. But what they're both saying is that in order to be a free person, you need to be reevaluating who you are. You need to change who you are. You need to become a better person over time. You need to not have the same conversations you're having over and over and over again. And if you do that, you can become a Rachaman. You can you can praise God. You can become a better person, and you won't end up just like sitting in a jail cell with your friends, just having the same conversations you had 9 years earlier. So I think on that deepest level, that's why this show fits. The show fits with the Seder because I really do think it's saying the same thing, albeit from a more ridiculous standpoint and from a funnier standpoint, and all the like platitudes I can say to prove that they're not exactly the same thing, obviously. But I feel like it's saying the same concept, like the same basic message is the same, that our Seders are supposed to transform us. We're not supposed to be the same person after Pesach that we were at the beginning. Just like the Jewish people are not the same before Pesach that they are at the beginning. Any thoughts or questions on that from anyone?
Well, I'm a big fan of Seinfeld. I mean, that's to me is the Jewish show of the world.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the show about nothing, but yet the Seder is a show about everything.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that what we go through, the torment, especially the women and the cooking and the slavery of making sure, like this one is happening on a Friday night, and then to Shabbos, and then you have to go to therapy and take Prozac and figure out the Seder, and then you're finally sitting at the Seder. And that moment in time was your grandchildren and your children reflecting when we were slaves. But the reality is we've been going through a whole turmoil just to get to that point in time, to be at that Seder, to remember how we were in Mitzrayim. And that was a little bit like Seinfeld at the end. I mean, how do you end a Seinfeld like that? I mean, it's like you're pulling the rug under us. It's a horrible ending, but that's the reality of it. We're going back to
100%.
we're going back to leaving Egypt again. We're
Right.
going back to the button. We're going
Right.
back to that. It's
Oh,
excellent,
interesting. Right.
excellent what you did. Excellent.
Yeah. And I think in there, but what's different is that when they're having the conversation, they're not reevaluating it. They're just having the conversation again. But we're supposed to not do, right? Exactly as you're saying. It's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be something just chatting around, right? It's supposed to be difficult. Maybe not as difficult as we make it sometimes, but it's supposed to be difficult on a purposeful level.
Today I lost my phone in the shul, and the rabbi, thank God, helped me. But the torment of losing a shul, I can imagine being in Egypt and losing your cell phone. It's just it's just mind-boggling what we go through just to have that Seder.
Right.
And it goes from generation to generation.
Definitely.
I noticed, I remember seeing the irony that the show's about nothing, there's no development, and yet the popularity of the show went through a development from being just lukewarm to being one of the most popular shows ever. So even if the characters themselves, the creative minds behind it did have this development over time.
Right. And I actually have a Torah about that later, where the show very much starts with disgrace and ends with glory. It actually fits somewhat like kind of like looking above, observing what happened. It very much fits with the Jewish people story kind of thing, where it becomes like, the show instead of just being something that lasts, a season or two. 100%. Okay. So I thought I would do a couple more. The next one I thought I would do somewhat of a shorter one. The question that, is there a particular, somebody asked, is there a particular Newman style greeting that should
I
accompany
love the Newman.
So what I imagined in the Haggadah is that like a couple times throughout the Seder is that Jerry hates people that are poppin' people that just come over without like calling first. And like in particular, there's one where like Elaine wants to live in the apartment building, and he's kind of all upset, like, wait, I don't want that. She's just going to come over all the time. So I feel like Jerry would really hate Eliyahu. Like, he just like comes over. You don't know when he's coming over. He just comes on in. He didn't call before. He doesn't. So that's where I was thinking it in terms of the Eliyahu greeting. I deal with the Newman stuff a bunch, and we'll actually. Oh no, we're not going to discuss that this time. But I deal with it a couple of times in terms of like. In terms of all the bad things in the Haggadah, essentially, I attribute Newman to all the bad things in the Haggadah. Okay, so what I wanted to, we can actually go back. Here, I want to show a page. Sorry. So something I've always thought about is why is Moshe completely absent from the Haggadah? Because if you think about it, Moshe is like the character. I have a 4-year-old, and he actually came up with this on his own because he's been like into superheroes recently. He's like, he was just coming over to us, and he's like, is Moshe the superhero of the Pesach story? Like, he's learning this in school, and he kind of is, right? He's like the one that does all the miracles. He can do all this stuff, but he is absent from this story. And this, the Hebrew text is the only time Moshe's in the text whatsoever, and it's in a side way. It's like not important. It's not like vital to the story. It's literally in a quote that's really about something else, that they believed in God. So any thoughts from anyone as to why is Moshe so absent, right? If Moshe's the superhero of the story, like it would be like watching Avengers from like a person's perspective and like completely wiping out the superheroes. Like that would feel a ridiculous movie. Like what is going on with the Pesach story that we like completely whitewash him? Like he's not here at all. Any thoughts?
That bothers it. It's important that the saga of the Jewish people and the story of the Jewish people, rather than just the story of the hero, that of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Okay, so it would be important, right? If Moshe was in, then the focus is supposed to be on the Jewish people and not supposed to be on Moshe. Any other thoughts? Definitely on the right track. All right, that's okay. We can work with that. So what I wanted to show is I don't know if anyone can think about where I'm going with this, but there's a character in Seinfeld that's completely absent from the show that seems like he should, of course, should be in it, but he's just like not, and he only gets like these throw-ins similar to Moshe, where he like comes in, but like he's not really there. And who I'm talking about is Larry David. So Jerry, it was written by two people mostly, or created by two people, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. It's called Seinfeld. Jerry's the main character of the entire show. Jerry's like everything. Meanwhile, Larry David is like barely there. He's in like 50 cameos. It depends how you count them. So I wanted to show a video of what I'm talking about. Like he's there randomly, very randomly, and usually as his voice. More often it's his voice rather than his more often it's his voice rather than his face. But I'll show, this is a 7-minute clip of every single time he's in it. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But I wanted to show like some of the times that he's there, because he's like so infrequently in the show, but he's there just for a second. So I just wanted to show some of it just so you get a sense of what I'm talking about.
You're under arrest for first degree murder, the death of Miss Chelsea Lanning.
Is he wearing a cape?
And that's Larry David. That's
Hello?
Larry David's voice.
Is this 555-8383?
Have no idea.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you steal my car?
Yes, I did.
That's Newman.
Those are just some of the times, meaning like it's his voice in the background, it's his it's his voice in the background, it's his like face, it's him on the phone, he's George Steinbrenner, he's like a whole bunch of people, but he's never important, right? It's cameos, it's side projects, he's never actually a character in the show. And I was trying to figure out why. So I think I found the answer, and the answer is actually in an episode of Curb. So we're going to watch a couple minutes of Curb, Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is Larry David's show that came after Seinfeld. But it's appropriate because the episode is called Seinfeld, because it's a reunion. It's kind of like a reunion episode. And so what's happening in the show is they try to make a reunion in Curb Your Enthusiasm, but Larry David gets into a fight with George, with Jason Alexander, and Jason Alexander runs off the set. So Larry David says, maybe I should try to be George. And that makes sense because the George is actually based on Larry David from like a practical standpoint. So I want to show you that scene, and I want to ask the same question. Why is Larry David not in Seinfeld? It's like a minute clip.
Let me try it. Let me do one scene. What do you got to lose? So I'm in the bank the other day, I'm on the line, and the guy in front of me is leaving a space in front of him. Well, you know, I can't take that.
No, you can't take that.
I'm thinking, come on, tighten it up, dude, tighten it up.
Right.
So then, oh, you're gonna do the BlackBerry head down thing on me now? What is with the BlackBerry people? Can I just pick up a magazine, hold it in front of your face, and read it while you're talking? Is that okay, too?
Wait, what? Magazine?
Hey, George.
Are you happy?
What?
What? I want to know if you're happy.
Yeah, I'm reasonably happy.
You had to interfere, didn't you?
George, what are you talking about?
Kramer and I were all set to do this fake mugging, and you had to put all these ideas in his head that he was doing something wrong.
George, wouldn't it be easier just to talk to Amanda?
No. 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 Ho ho! George is getting upset. Huh? Huh? What do you think?
Anyone have any thoughts as to why that did not work?
Chemistry was a mess.
Like, why doesn't it work as George? He is George, or George is him, really. Like, why doesn't that? It doesn't work at all. Any thoughts as to why?
People are embedded with George.
Okay, so maybe it's just like it's not George. He just cannot be George. I think it's something else.
It's a little bit more competition with Jerry. So
Right?
many-
It's like Larry David's too much. He's just too much. In Curb, he's like the main character. Everything's focused on him because he's such a character. He's like too intense. And when he comes in, their focus is all on him. And in Seinfeld, the focus is never really all on George. It's like they share they very well share like the spotlight. And that's one of the beauties of the show, is that it really does share the spotlight between the four characters in a way that shows have trouble with usually. And Larry David, when he comes in, he's too much. And what I was thinking is essentially it's what we said about Moshe, right? If Moshe was in the Seder, Moshe's too much. He's just too much of a personality. He's too intense. If Moshe was in the Seder, we'd all focus on the Seder. We wouldn't be able to focus on like the Jewish people. The focus would just shift way too much, just in the way in that scene, the focus shifts way too much to Larry David in the way that if it was George, it wouldn't have. And so it's important actually to skip over Moshe, to make him just have a cameo, because if he was there, we wouldn't be able to focus on him. It wouldn't be able to be so vital. Okay. So I wanted to do maybe two more. We'll see if I can fit, because the last one I would do is short. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask a question about the Seder Plate. Whenever we talk about the Seder Plate, we usually talk about the things separately. But I wanted to ask a question essentially of what is the Seder Plate as a whole? Like what's something that unites everything on the Seder Plate? Like we usually talk about it as a Seder Plate, but when we talk about Maror, we talk about Maror. When we talk about Harusa, we talk about Harusa. We talk about each of the things on their own. I wanted to ask that type of question. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show an episode of Seinfeld, and I'm curious if you can think about what's kind of going on here. So what this is I like kind of clipped. There's a whole episode that's about this. I clipped it so that it's only the things that we need. But it's about 2.5 minutes. But I want you to think about how this fits in with the Seder Plate. So, 1 second, sorry. Just let me open it. Okay.
Yep. Hello? What? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. I just had something canceled the same weekend. Okay, great. Bye. Yeah, you know, life is amazing. I just lost a job, and 5 minutes later, get another job, same weekend, same money. You know who you are? Even Steven.
What is all this?
Oh, I played cards last night.
Oh, yeah? How'd you do?
Broke even.
You always break even.
Yeah, I know. Like yesterday, I lost a job, and then I got another one. And then I missed a TV show, and later on, they reran it. And then today, I missed a train, went outside, and caught a bus. It never fails. I always even out.
Give me $20.
What for?
Just give me $20.
What the hell was that?
Let's see if you get the $20 back.
You know, you could have thrown a pencil out the window and seen if that kind of flash. Wait. A 20!
Oh my God. Jerry,
Yes.
I've been doing a lot of thinking.
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't think we should see each other anymore.
Oh, that's okay.
What?
No, it's fine. No problem. I'll meet somebody else.
Really?
Sure. See, things always even out for me.
Huh?
It's fine. Anyway, it's been really nice dating you for a while. And, good luck.
Yeah, you too.
She'll be coming round the bend. Elaine, don't get too down. Everything will even out. See, I have two friends. You were up, he was down. Now he's up, you're down. You see how it all evens out for me?
Wait. That's too much. Mine was more than yours.
Let's call it even.
Excellent.
The reason why that episode fits so well is because that actually fits with Jerry's personality. Jerry, throughout the entire show, very much is like he never gets too high, he never gets too low, he's never too sad, he's never too happy. Like he very much is that type of character. And so when everything happens that makes him even Stevens, right? Like it lands very well, because this is a later episode. It lands very well because largely he is that type of character. And what I wanted to do is just showing a Seder plate. I'm just going to go earlier in the Haggadah to show just what a Seder plate looks like. And if you think about each thing on the Seder plate, literally everything, every single thing is like has really nice things about it and really sad things about it. Every single thing. So some things are easier than others. So I'll do those first. The maror is clearly a sad thing, right? It's supposed to be bitter for the bitter times we had in Egypt. That's sad. But the second thing on the bottom is the chazeret, which is explicitly supposed to kind of be bitter, right? It's also maror, but it's supposed to be positive. It's supposed to, because in Aramaic it means chasa, which is that God had mercy on us. So maror has two sides. It's one that we're sad, it's how bitter it was in Egypt, but also that God had mercy on us of how bitter it was in Egypt. The charoset is kind of, I've heard two main explanations for this. One is that it's the mortar for the bricks that the Jews used in Egypt, right? That's sad. But also that it's supposed to be like it's supposed to like kind of counteract the maror, that you dip it in something sweet. And that's why it's like with wine or with apples and dates, it's supposed to be sweet so that it counteracts the maror. It's supposed to like kind of bring something sweet to the table. So hakaruset is also sad, but also happy. Parsley is a symbol of spring, right? It's Chag Aviv and the spring holiday. And of course, we should eat a vegetable. At the same time, we dip it in salt water, right? So it's spring and new and things that are nice, combined with things that are sad, the tears that we had while leaving Egypt. The shank bone is supposed to be God's strong hands that took us out of Egypt. At the same time, it can't be eaten. It's the symbol, this blank symbol of the Korban Pesach, of the Pesach sacrifice we don't have anymore, right? It's almost like a very clear indication. It's like the breaking of the glass. It's like a very clear indication that the temple is not with us. The egg is supposed to, on one hand, be the Korban Chagiga, the other sacrifice that we gave on Pesach. But at the same time, the Ramah says this explicitly, the reason the egg's on the Seder plate is because it's a symbol of mourning. That's why, I don't know if everyone here does this, but we tend to eat hard-boiled eggs in salt water at the beginning of the meal, right? Because it's supposed to be like a mourning food, that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. We can't give this sacrifice. It's sad that we don't have the temple. And so everything on the Seder plate, every single thing is like what Jerry is in the show. It's like even Stevens, where it's positive and it's also negative. It's sad and happy. And the matzah is actually like this too. Where the matzah is halach manya, we talked about that before, the bread we ate while we were enslaved, but it's also the bread we took out with us. as we were leaving, right? Every single thing. And I think it fits with Jerry's attitude at the end of that episode, is that like, we should never get too down and we should never be too happy. We're good at the second one, I think, as a Jewish people, that we should never be too happy. That's why we like break the class and things like that. But also we find humor when things are bad, right? We do that, I think, because we've learned this lesson that the Seder Plate represents, that we should always be even Stevens, that we should never be too happy when things are good, and we should never be too sad when things are bad. And I think that's important for us as Jewish people. As we look through our history, there are times when things are really sad and times that things are really happy. And it's really important for us to kind of have this more balanced attitude, that things are sad, but we'll be saved, or things are happy, but we should be careful. Do I have time for one more? Do you have time for one more? Okay, so we're going to do one more. So actually, I'm going to go to a page that we did this page already, but I'll go back to it if I have time for one more. A second. Oh no, it is this page, right? So there's a quote in the, I quoted this before. Apologize for the same thing, but it's a separate idea. That, and we say this as part of Az Yashir, but Vayar Yisrael at the Yad Agdolah, and the Jewish people saw the great hand, Asher Asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, that Hashem did in Mitzrayim, Vayiru Ha'am et Hashem, and the people feared God, Vayaminu ba'Hashem Moshe Avdo, and they believed in God and Moshe as servant. So they see God's hand, and then they believe in God. It's not like an obvious thing, I think, if you think about that. Like, why do they believe in God all of a sudden because they see his hands, right? Like, there are times where at least the Midrash imagines that they saw God, right? Like they saw God, the godly presence when they got the Torah, when the sea split. But here, what we're talking about is they saw his hands, that God's hands that happened in Mitzrayim, and all of a sudden they believe in God. And like it seems odd. It seems like an odd thing. I don't know if anyone can think about where I'm going with this that hasn't read the Haggadah yet, but there's a time where this happens to Seinfeld watchers. This exact thing happens to Seinfeld watchers, where they see the hand of something, and then they believe he exists. And if you can think about it for a second, if you know your Seinfeld, it might still be hard, because this feels like a stretch, but I promise it's good. That this literally happens to people in the show. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a set of clips. Again, this is only a minute long, but a set of clips of this is every single time a character shows up. And I think if you think about it, I think if you think about it, this character feels like he's part of the show. He feels like he's present. He's part of the show, and yet we never see his face. We never meet him. And we never kind of interact with him in any way. So it's about a minute and a half. This isn't every single time he comes up, but it's virtually all of them. In fact, it skips all the kind of inappropriate ones, which is great.
Bob Sacamano, he came in here for a hernia operation. Oh yeah, routine surgery. Now he's sitting around in a chair by a window going,
She's got rabies, just like my friend Bob Sacamano. Look at that, she's delirious. She's foaming at the mouth!
Well, Bob Sacamano, he stayed with me once for a year and a half. You know my friend Bob Sacamano?
I thought he was Kramer's friend.
Well, he called last night about 3 a.m. and we got to talking. He sells Russian hats down at Battery Park. $40.
Hey, Jer, are you going to this Bob Sacamano party?
Am I going? It was 3 nights ago.
Hey, you know, Elaine, she stopped by. Yeah, dropped off that Bob Sacamano hat. Yeah, oh, she's upset with him. Yes, sirree. Yeah, well, thanks for stopping by.
Would you please just get on with the stupid Bob Sacamano story?
Okay, well, I'm on the phone with Bob, and I realized right then and there that I need to return this pair of pants. So I'm off to the store.
What happened to Bob Sacamano?
Well, nothing. His part of the story is done. Well, don't worry about it. I know a guy.
Down here?
Yeah, Bob Sacamano's father. You know, my friend Bob Sacamano made a fortune off of those. See, he came up with the idea for the rubber band. Before that, people would just hit the ball and it would fly away.
So that's not every single time Bob Sacamano comes up, but it's a lot of them. And if you think about it, we never see Bob Sacamano. We never meet him. We don't even see like the side of his face the way we see like the side of George Steinbrenner's face. Like he's not present ever. But I think if you ask just about any Seinfeld fan, is Bob Sacamano in Seinfeld? Everyone would say yes, right? Of course, he's a character, right? Like he's somebody that's part of the show. Of course he is, because he comes up all these times. And so I think it's something very similar, right? We don't see Bob Sacamano, but we see his hands, or his great hand, not really great hands, but we see his hands throughout the show, right? We see him calling Kramer, we see him calling Jerry, we see the hat that he gives, we see the fake wizards that his father gives, we see the invitation he invites to everyone. Like we see his existence, even though we never meet him. And I wonder if like the same thing's happening in this Pesach, in this part of the Torah, when the Jewish people see all these miracles, they don't need to see God to know that he exists. They feel it because like they see his hand. They see the hand and they see that things are happening, godly things are happening. There must be somebody doing it. And I wonder if this is actually what religious people are doing till today, right? We don't have the same type of miracles, but it's seeing God's hand in the world. And it's seeing the invitations and the metaphorical invitations and the sable hats and the times we were called, right? It's seeing those metaphorical hands of God in the same way that we see the hand of Bob Sacamano, and we understand that Bob Sacamano is there even if he's not actually part of the show. So those are the ones that I was thinking of teaching. Happy to answer any questions. I did see one, any question, any connection of the four children to the four characters of Seinfeld. I had to do that. Even if it didn't fit, I had to do that. But yeah, I think it really fits really well. And I'm not going to go into it right now. Part of the reason I'm not doing it, it's my longest Var Torah in the entire book. And I used some Greek philosophy of the time to try and explain, to kind of redefine the four children. And then it really fits to the four characters of Seinfeld like really well, and fits to a lot of foursomes in TV shows. In particular, like, I don't know, but Seinfeld, it really fits really well. Any other questions?
I was just going to get Rabbi Reinstein. Thank you very much. I was just going to give a plug for your book,
which
is the unofficial Seinfeld Haggadah. I think on Amazon Prime you could still probably get it.
Yeah, definitely.
For Pesach. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Any questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself at this time. But thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Jewish Center of Atlantic Beach, partnering with Young Israel of Hollywood. That's what we get to do now that my brother is at Jewish Center of Atlantic Beach. It's a lot of fun. Looking forward to the next one. But wishing everyone a Chag Kosher V'Sameach.
Chag Kosher V'Sameach. Thank you for having me.
Sure.